I was an observer, so like my mom didn't have to tell me a lot.
Do you
Like,
you're picking up on whatever you see that's happening?
I literally watched everybody, and I learned to not question anymore because I was so aware sometimes that it would make people uncomfortable. So down to that, like as a toddler, I remember a lot.
Our culture now is a little bit more accepting of that, to acknowledge like I have these struggles, I have these issues. And it may not be necessarily that previous generations didn't want to talk about it, but maybe it could have been, right? That it felt so oppressive that there was never the right time, there was never the right moment. I truly just need to suffer in silence, which even me saying that out loud, it's still kind of hard to wrap my head around because as you said, I want the generations to be better moving forward. Yeah. But I also understand that we kind of have to have the real talk of how it used to be back then compared to how it is now. I always talk about like modeling behavior. And like there's things that parents and anybody who, like, if you have a mentor or anybody that you're taking care of, right, you have an opportunity to impress and influence, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes with parents, you're not like, they're not explicitly telling you in this scenario, like you said, don't go on these high buildings and look over, nothing like that. No. But you can tell based on how they behave, how they carry themselves, that you sort of learn the do's and the don'ts.
Yes.
Right?
I was an observer, so like my mom didn't have to tell me a lot.
You're picking up on whatever you see that's happening?
I literally watched everybody, and I learned to not question anymore because I was so aware sometimes that it would make people uncomfortable. So down to that, like as a toddler, I remember a lot.
That's very interesting. So when you're saying that your parents maybe they weren't always explicitly giving you instruction or rules about stuff, but you're kind of observing. So you're saying that started off when you were very, very young?
Mm-hmm. I knew how to navigate certain relationships just by watching how everybody else was.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to be seen. This is why this right now is a lot for me, because like...
Which we appreciate you for being. No, let me ask you a follow-up to that. So do you and your parents, have y'all, maybe this is more a mom question since you said you don't really associate with dad as much. Have you guys ever had discussions about that since then? That there was a lot of things that kind of went unsaid and I just kind of had to observe to understand how to fit in it?
I would say my mom, the way she says it is, you were the easiest kid. I'm so grateful I had you first. Is I guess the only way she would really brace on that, because I feel like before, everything kind of like happened in a different way. The most I got in trouble was like I stole a bike from a charity drive because my best friend's mom wouldn't give her a bike.
Oh, you stole it for your friend?
For my friend.
Got it.
For charity, It was a charity drive at school. So here,
there you go.
My best friend doesn't have a bike and I have a bike.
I'm trying to get one for her.
So I got in so much trouble. My mom's like, but how could I really be mad? Like, it was a charity drive.
That's fair. Maybe she's like, that's those little sticky
She's
points.
Like, don't steal.
Yeah, I want to help you get one, but please don't take it from other people. That's fair.
So unfair.
So you guys, okay, so it's safe to say, even right now, so you guys haven't really had some of those discussions maybe about how it was when you were coming up?
I feel like some of the subjects are a little touchy, and I don't mind talking about things, but I don't think everybody is ready to talk about stuff.
Oh, most definitely. There's plenty of things that usually we're quite sensitive to. The only reason why I'm asking you is because I also try to talk about on this platform the importance of getting to those things, because it's very natural for us to kind of keep pushing things further and further down the road.
That would be the programming in my
And then what happens is we just get older and older and we never actually deal with this stuff. And then it ends up having, in some cases, a disastrous impact. And when it's our turn to have our own families and our own relationships.
Oh, absolutely. In my family, we hold things in. I try not to, because it hurts physically for me to not, let things go. But she's got Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, and so like I feel like a lot of the things that she likes to hold in, it manifests in her ailments. So whereas I know she wants the change in her life and she wants, to not be sick, but she's still not willing to like really see herself for everything she can be.
That's an interesting perspective too. I could imagine, because if you have those ailments, you have the physical
It's hard to even think
pain
with
that you
pain.
might be dealing
Yeah.
with, right? Like, to even imagine what it could look like. But I like to make the point also that even when you're suffering from mental and emotional issues, it can manifest in a physical way. Or maybe in your mother's case, for example, it might amplify whatever she's already experiencing. Like, you know, you can get that anxious feeling and it's like in your stomach.
Oh yeah, I can feel when she's sick. I can feel her from here. And right now she's in Puerto Rico, and I had like hit her up maybe a few weeks ago, and I was like, "What's going on? What's up?" And she had just gotten out of the ER, so I'm like, we're always very connected. So I'll say that. Like sometimes I feel like the words hurt more because she's not ready to heal, but like she's ready to evolve the relationship in a different way where we don't always need to talk about those things, because it's not like we're holding on to the same patterns, so to speak. At least not her and I.
Okay. But you're also, if I'm understanding correctly, that's where you're kind of drawing the line in the sand where you and her are different.
Yeah.
Because
I'm trying to heal.
she's somewhat more evasive, so she may not want to go into those things, but you're more comfortable
It ends with me.
going to that. Hey, that's
I'm
how
trying to heal all these
that's how
generational
generational
wounds.
things change.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, I want it to be better, and I didn't learn a lot of these things myself.
My
so.
grandmother's so scared of talking about anything and just questioning anything. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, not the extreme, but like, because I can still be at peace and just kind of accept the world around me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in, again, you have to have at least general acknowledgement of things. If you want to grow,
My mom
if you
does.
want to move forward, right?
My grandmother, no.
And sometimes, I also know
It's that generation. though.
generational is a thing, because for a lot of folks, I think I was talking to another therapist on a previous episode. We talked about how our culture now is a little bit more accepting of that, to acknowledge, like, I have these struggles, I have these issues. And it may not be necessarily that previous generations didn't want to talk about it, but maybe it could have been, right? That it felt so oppressive that there was never the right time, there was never
Yeah.
the right moment. I truly just need to suffer in silence.
Yeah.
You know, which even me saying that out loud, it's still kind of hard to wrap my head around, because, as you said, I want the generations to be better moving forward. But I also understand that we kind of have to have the real talk of how it used to be back then compared to how it is now.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get into the details more. We can have platforms like this to actually discuss these things, whereas maybe in the past that really couldn't have been an option as much for most of us.
Absolutely. I mean, even just being on video, like, my grandmother didn't even have any of this growing up, but like, I couldn't imagine like growing up in the 50s or 60s. And, like,
I mean,
already an oppressive time period.
Yeah, I was gonna say, most of us we're products of our time, right?
Yep.
Not because you don't want change, but it's just the time that you happen to grow up in. Certain things can happen, and maybe certain things couldn't happen. Not because you didn't want them to.
Yeah.
And I say it that way because, especially what I do and in the field of mental health, that's the nuance. When we talk about a lot of things, we talk about things very black and white. It's usually extremes. You're either on this side, you're that side. You look at the world this way or this way.
But if it's a spectrum,
Correct.
There's all the middle.
I make the point that most things are on a spectrum, right? We all fall in different areas and different places when we're thinking
believe
about
in the
different
gray.
concepts. Right. The gray to me is that's the truth. That's actually what most of us are going through. So the question is, when we try to engage in these discussions and actually talk about these things, how do we properly and comfortably articulate how we're actually feeling without having to feel like you have to push yourself into one bucket or another? Because I think that doesn't lead to productive dialogue. It actually makes it harder for us to connect because we're not being very honest. Do you have any thought about that?
Say that again. A restructure.
No, so I'm talking about these extremes that we tend to go into when we're trying to communicate. A lot of times we kind of go one side or the other. But as you acknowledge, a lot of things are gray.
Yeah.
But if we continue to put this like kind of dynamic where you got to go on one side or the other, it makes it kind of hard to understand.
I think fear is a big part of that, because like you have to even like see another perspective or see that there's more than just black and white. You have to brace that fear. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Why don't you want to think that there could be another way, or why?
That's a good inquisitive question. If you really want to learn something, right? if you actually want to learn, you would ask that question.
Yeah.
Why would it be so bad
Yeah.
to allow somebody here to speak a different viewpoint than one that you already hold?